For the most part, you can't gamble in Alabama, at least according to the state's constitution. In 1901, the Constitution was drawn up and officially made gambling illegal. But why was that included? Why is gambling illegal in Alabama? That question was submitted to Ask Alabama by Ron. And my temptation is to just say because churches don't like it and hand-wave the whole question. But here's the thing, the churches have never liked gambling throughout the history of the United States, but that hasn't stopped gambling from rising in popularity and falling out of favor a number of times. Over in Mississippi, today the coastline is dotted with casinos, and the churches don't like it, but that doesn't mean they're unplugging the slot machines anytime soon. So clearly, even in the South, the churches aren't the only arbiters of what is and isn't legal. So what else is there? So the popularity of gambling has seen its ups and downs since the country was just a handful of colonies. And during the mid to late 1800s, we were on the back end of one of those waves of popularity. After the Civil War, Alabama and many other southern states even ran lotteries to raise some quick money to repair infrastructure that was destroyed in the war. But lotteries started facing some backlash when people learned the kind of folks who were actually running the lotteries. See, in those days, lottery systems tended to be rife with corruption. Companies would pay bribes and kickbacks to get control of running and promoting the state lotteries. And once they had control, the companies weren't particularly concerned with running a fair game. Pretty famously, in the late 1800s, Louisiana ran one of the most profitable and most corrupt lotteries in the country. They had no problem with straight up bribing lawmakers to secure a contract, and if they couldn't sell all the tickets to a particular drawing, they would still include the unsold tickets, and if one was picked, the lottery winnings would go to the company running the lottery. Stories about this corruption became pretty well known in the era when the Alabama Constitution was being drawn up, which is likely why gambling was outlawed at the time. Now you may be asking, isn't straight up banning gambling sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Gambling is still a big moneymaker, so couldn't the state just institute some kind of oversight or regulation of the gambling business to root out corruption but still keep bringing in the revenue? That's what states with legalized gambling do today, after all. But over a century ago, that's not how government worked. Ideas like government regulation and oversight of private industry weren't really a thing. There was no FDA checking food, there was no OSHA protecting workers' rights. That type of regulation didn't become commonplace until the era of the New Deal, which was still decades away. So when faced with issues like corruption in the gambling industry, they basically had two options: live with it or straight up outlaw the whole industry. Alabama went with option number 2. Now the state of Alabama is probably going to have to deal with the question of legalized gambling in the future. The state's love of low taxes but desires for improvement are inevitably going to lead to a need for a new revenue stream, and gambling in some form has become a common fix for other states. But it's going to face opposition, not just from churches and conservative groups, but from one of the most well-funded groups that take part in the fight against gambling: other casinos. Casinos in nearby states, tribal casinos, and gambling halls that already operate in a legal gray area in Alabama have nothing to gain and everything to lose from gambling being legalized in this state. After all, everyone who gambles in Alabama's new casinos won't be gambling in these existing casinos, so they have a vested interest in shutting down potential competition, which often leads to strange alliances of church groups against vice standing shoulder to shoulder with, and sometimes being financed by, the same vice interests they are opposing. Of course, a lot of this tends to get hidden in dark money groups, so no one can see where the money comes from, but you can see a good example of it in 2018 in Florida. That's when the Seminole Tribe and the Disney Corporation teamed up to push for an anti-casino amendment. Not because they're morally opposed to gambling, but because neither group wanted to deal with competition from other casinos or resorts. Anyway, that's how gambling became illegal in Alabama in the first place and why it stayed that way for so long. We may one day get gambling, but voters are going to have to get past the weird hybrid mutant that is the church-cino to do it. I'm Jonathan Soboleski for Reckon. If you like these videos and like what we're doing on Reckon, you can help us out by following us on Reckon by AL.com on Facebook and Twitter. And if you've got questions about Alabama that you want answered, you can submit your questions to Ask Alabama at www.al.com/ask. Thanks for watching.